Anwen, let me start with you. It is significant, is it not, that you would have as close a neighbor as Canada, which is allied to the U.S., arguably, in most other regards, essentially really calling out the U.S. on its own human rights record when it comes to refugees and asylum seekers?
Yes, it certainly is. I mean, the Canadian court was careful to make clear that its purpose was not to pass judgment on the U.S. asylum system, and that they were there to rule on the consequences in terms of compliance with Canadian law of what happens to asylum seekers who were returned to the United States from the Canadian border pursuant to the Safe Third Country Agreement. Nonetheless, you can't get away from the finding, which was that the treatment of these applicants in the United States was such that the Canadian government, in returning them to those conditions, was violating the fundamental laws of Canada. And, I mean, Canada and the United States have both historically played a role as leaders in global refugee protection. These were two countries that tended to see their commitments to refugee protection as comparable, that both had, and I mean, I say this as somebody who spends her life dealing with the flaws in the American system, as do my colleagues on the Canadian side. But nonetheless, I mean, these are two countries that had well-developed legal and bureaucratic systems for refugee protection. And so to have a situation where a court in Canada is essentially saying that the United States is not a safe country for asylum seekers, this is definitely significant.
Stephen, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's sort of a new issue, right, where you've had within the U.S., as Anwen there correctly said, this debate that's been happening ever since, especially Donald Trump came in office, but even before him, about how asylum seekers / refugees should be dealt with.
Well, for quite a long